Last night, it was pretty understandable for pitching to be pretty rough because it was a 5-game slate. We had Coors Field available to us, so it makes sense and may be difficult to find pitchers we want to use for daily fantasy baseball. Today, it's a 14-game slate because it's a Friday. Got all games on this main slate except for one, and yet for some reason, it's still really tough to find pitchers we truly want to use for DFS. So although it's a big slate, it's still a pretty tough one to pitcher. There are 3 guys who I do like enough to use, but some of them may take some convincing. So let's dive on in and get you set for this Friday main slate. Welcome on into the Solo Shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Friday's 14-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. And fortunately, as of right now, it looks like the weather is good to go for today. Don't see anything really standing out there. No super high temperatures either. So things relatively flat across the slate, which is good for us. We can play things straight up, look at generic park factors, and be good to go for today. As always, we are back here later on today, 4 p.m. for the MLB Q&A, but also before then we have our NASCAR Heat Check podcast. That'll be on the FanDuel YouTube page at 10:30 and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy podcast feed after that. We also have our UFC Vegas 36 podcast via Austin Swain, already posted. You can find that by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review and hit subscribe as well. Hey, soccer fans, this season, FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that is entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you got to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games this soccer season. You'll earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win up to $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel and enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply, and don't forget to make your game day more delicious and sub in the captain. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate. Shohei Ohtani is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel, checking in at $10,800. Freddie Peralta is $10,200. Alek Manoah is $10,000. We have Adam Wainwright at $9,600. Kyle Gibson is $94,000. Nathan Eovaldi is $91,000. Jose Urquidy is $9,000. We have Madison Bumgarner, Vladimir Gutierrez, Sean Manaea, John Means, and Anthony DeSclafani. We assume at $8,000 or higher as well. DeSclafani not officially confirmed as starter yet because he's dealing with some injuries as well. So I assume it's DeSclafani. No confirmation on that one, though. And speaking of injuries, Shohei Ohtani seems like he's good to go. He was supposed to start back on Wednesday, but got pushed back because of his hand injury and his wrist injury, and he's their prize guy. The Angels would not risk this if there were any question about his health. So I think that their actions of having him start for today allow us to be in on him at $10,800. He's facing the Rangers here, which is why I would love to be here if I can justify it. They have just an 82 WRC plus against righties, which is the 3rd lowest number on the slate. Their 145 ISO is the 2nd lowest. They don't draw that many walks. And the walk number is good because it should allow Ohtani to be efficient with his pitches. That's good for us from a floor perspective because there is some concern they could keep Ohtani short down the stretch because, why would you not, given they're not going to the playoffs and he is, again, their future alongside Mike Trout. We have seen some of that. Ohtani's gone just 90 and 84 pitches this past 2 starts, but he still went 8 innings in one of those because he was disgusting. The 84-pitch start was because of ineffectiveness more so than pitch count there. I think that he will go long enough to be usable for DFS. And even in the Baltimore game where he let up 3 home runs, he still got 7 strikeouts. Not like he was totally toast out there. Just had some, hard hit balls against him. Ohtani has a 26% strikeout rate the past 10 starts since he's been using his slider more often. I think he deserves to be at the top of our list tonight. There are just too many things working in his favor and too much talent in Ohtani for us to go elsewhere. So Shohei Ohtani, to me, the number 1 pitcher for today. As far as the non-Ohtani options, if you're concerned about the hand or don't want to pay that salary, I do think there are 2 guys around $9,000 who do grade out pretty well. One of those is Nathan Eovaldi. He's facing Cleveland for the 2nd straight start, and I always hate those situations. I really wanted to avoid Eovaldi because of that when I was initially doing my research. But Eovaldi's good. We don't have many good pitchers on this slate, so I think that Eovaldi should be high on our list, despite the fact this is a repeat matchup. Eovaldi in that game at least was solid. He had a 14.4% swinging strike rate. He had 7 strikeouts across 5 innings, and getting that many whiffs right now for Eovaldi is not a surprise. He has a really good curveball. It's his best pitch to generate whiffs. It is a 38% whiff rate according to Baseball Savant. Eovaldi's been a bit more willing to throw it recently. Usage is still not super high, but it's up to 19% over his past 7 starts, and he has a 28% strikeout rate in that time. He has just a 3% walk rate. He is letting up some fly balls, so it's not all perfect for Eovaldi from a pitching perspective, and Cleveland is not a super high strikeout team, so I'm not saying this is like a no-brainer, no-doubt matchup, but they're not a good team either. They have a 94 WRC plus against righties, so they're not a team I think we need to avoid. Eovaldi is at home. He has had better batted ball suppression there than he's had on the road. He's had better results too. So it may not be a perfect situation, and I wish it weren't a repeat matchup, but I'm struggling to find really good alternatives on this slate. So to me, Eovaldi does deserve to be number 2, despite the fact there are some factors working against him. Now, part of the pitch on Eovaldi was that he has been altering his pitch mix, leaning more on a good pitch for him, and it's helped him find a lot of success. That same reasoning can lead us to Vladimir Gutierrez, our top value play, and the number 3 guy for tonight. And that may sound weird because Gutierrez is a guy I have stacked against several times this year, but he's made some tweaks recently, like Eovaldi, that allow us to use him here at $8,700 versus the Tigers. The primary issue that Gutierrez has had this year has been trying to get left-handed batters out. His strikeout rate against them is 15% compared to 21% against righties, and they were putting the ball in the air tons. They had a lot of home run issues. One way for a righty to try to cancel that out is to throw more changeups. Initially, Gutierrez wasn't really doing that. His usage was around 8% on that pitch, but over his past 6 starts, the changeup usage is 17%, and it's a pretty good pitch. It has an xWOBA against of 274, according to Baseball Savant. It has a 30% whiff rate, and he uses it almost exclusively versus lefties, and it's really helped him turn a corner here. In those 6 starts, Gutierrez has a 3.84 skill interactive ERA with a 23% strikeout rate. He is still struggling with hard contact, so I would not deem him to be a cash game play, but he has a ceiling. He went 7 innings with just 1 earned run against the Marlins 2 starts ago. They did get to him over the weekend, but that was their second time seeing him over a couple days. He had 7 strikeouts against the Cubs, 6 versus Pittsburgh, and yeah, those are all plus matchups, but the Tigers lose the DH. They have an 89 WRC plus against righties. They also have a 26% strikeout rate. So if this were a larger slate, I might not have gotten here, but it's a thin-nighted pitcher, so not only is Gutierrez a top value, but I'm fully willing to include him a player pool at pitcher, and I think the changes he has made have made that fully viable. So to me, the options for tonight are Ohtani, Gutierrez, and then Eovaldi in the middle, but all 3 to me, pretty even in terms of separation for tonight. Let's talk about the stacks for today. Stacks easier than the pitching, and I think that there are just a lot of options we could turn to. The one that stood out most to me was the Astros facing Jake Arrieta, coming off the IL today for the Padres, making his second start for them. And we know how the time for Arrieta in Chicago ended. His first start in San Diego, which was in Colorado, granted, didn't look a lot better, but I think that makes the Astros a priority stack here. Arrieta really seemed to turn downward once the sticky stuff discussion started. He was throwing more changeups, likely because he could actually grip that pitch, and he struggled in that time. Then Arrieta went on the IL for most of July. He came back on July 30th, and since then, things have been pretty nightmarish. He's had some great matchups. He faced Miami once, Colorado twice, some other teams that struggle with righties, and in that time, he still has an 11.81 ERA over his past 8 outings. Arrieta's let up 4 or more runs in 5 of those 8. He let up 6 in another, but 3 of those were unearned, so it's not a good situation across the board for Arrieta. The Padres obviously don't have a lot of great alternatives here. Starting Arrieta seems like it's purely a desperation move out of necessity. Houston does lose a DH in going to a National League park, but I think that they are still a top tier stack for today. So the Astros, to me, do grade out really well despite losing that DH. I do want to give a bump up to the lefties here. The guy sitting, I would assume, will probably be Michael Brantley or Yordan Alvarez. I'm hoping it's Brantley because the power surge he had earlier this summer has gone away. Alvarez, likely the top option if he were to play. Kyle Tucker is up there as well. I would downgrade him a bit if Brantley is in there while Alvarez sits or if Tucker sits, but they would still be a really good stack. So the Astros, to me, bump up the lefties, but be in on them either way. The Rays are in kind of a similar situation facing Randy Dobnak. Dobnak is like Arrieta, where he gets more ground balls than you would like. Everything else, though, says we can stack against him, and that's what we're going to be doing here. Dobnak coming off the 60-day IL, which means we've barely seen him since the sticky stuff discussion started, and we have seen him as a bit as a starter overall, though, and that time did not go well. He made 6 longer outings back in May and June before hitting the IL, and he let up at least 6 earned runs in 3 of those 6 outings, included a 4-homer game against the Yankees. So even though Dobnak does get ground balls, that doesn't mean there are no home runs. And the big reason is that he was letting up tons of hard contact. The hard hit rate was 57% over that time. He had a 10% strikeout rate. If you put lots of balls in play, you don't need the fly ball rate to be as high. And we saw that with Dobnak. The raw number of fly balls will increase because there are just more balls in play. It can also, we can also jack up the fly ball rate versus Dobnak by targeting lefties. They had a 33% fly ball rate against Dobnak when you include his time in the bullpen, 16% for righties. So the Rays, plenty of lefties we want to use. And I think it makes them an easy team to target here, giving heavy preference to the lefties over the righties. When ranking the lefties all year long, I have been super high on Austin Meadows and Brandon Lau, and they were far and away the top 2 guys here. I think Wander Franco is in that same tier now. Now, Franco did leave last night's game early with a headache, so keep that in mind. May not play, but against righties, since the start of August, Franco has a 205 ISO. He is still hitting more ground balls than you'd like, but he's hitting the ball hard. That makes it matter a bit less. I would still put him third behind Lau and Meadows, and it's worth noting that, again, he did leave last night's game, but the separation between Lau, Meadows, and Franco is lower than it's been all year. I think Franco is a superstar in the making, and I'm excited to see what he does, but we can get in on him now as well and be excited about his future at the same time. So to me, it is the Astros 1, Rays 2. I would rank them above the Braves, even though the Braves are at Coors Field. That's because they're facing Antonio Senzatela, who has been pitching well recently. And I think that the Braves get downgraded there, but they are still number 3 for me. Senzatela is an interesting guy because he lets up a ton of balls in play. Over his past 10 starts, he has an 18% strikeout rate with a 4% walk rate. Means he's letting a ball in play 78% of the time, and 45% of those have been hard hits. That's not a formula that should work at Coors Field, but for whatever reason, it has. He has a 3.71 ERA in this time. That is with 4 of those starts coming at Coors Field. He has let up just 3 home runs, and none of them have come in the past 6 starts. He's been on a really nice string here. So Senzatela, given his environment, is impressive, and we should commend him for that. But that's not always a formula that will work because balls in play lead to variance for pitchers. If it finds a glove, you're good, but that doesn't always happen. You can run into bad at ball luck and get hit hard. So the Braves' floor is lower because Senzatela is pitching really well right now and is, I think, talented. Their ceiling is still good, though, because of the number of balls in play he allows and the fact that it is Coors Field. I think that for cash games, if you don't want to get here, that's okay. But for tournaments, I do still like them a solid amount. The Braves, to me, grade out really well, and I would like to be here for sure. Now, the Braves did get their salaries bumped up from where they were yesterday, which is, the way it should have been. They were way too low yesterday. But 2 guys who didn't get bumped up enough, I don't think, were Dansby Swanson and Adam Duvall. Both those guys have big power, and they hit a ton of fly balls. They do strike out a bit, but Senzatela doesn't really get those, so it's less of a concern for me in this matchup. And Senzatela doesn't have massive platoon splits and actually lets up more fly balls to righties and lefties. Duvall and Swanson, both $3,700. I am going to be in on both of them for tonight. I think that they both do grade out really well. Let's move to things to watch, talk about some more potential stacks and one-offs here. I am very down for some Royals one-offs. They're facing Dallas Keuchel. Keuchel is not the pitcher he used to be. He's been trying to throw more sliders recently, but the hard hit rate against him is up to 50% in 8 starts doing that. And it's erasing the one thing he used to do well. So Keuchel, someone we can use batters against. Salvador Perez, always a good play. Alberto Mondesi got them that off last night, but should be back in there today. And then Michael A. Taylor, Emmanuel Rivera, Edward Olivares that they play might not get to a full stack, but I think that they do look good for one-offs, specifically Perez and Mondesi. I am not opposed to some Mets one-offs. They're facing Sean Nolan. Second start for Nolan versus the Mets. In the first one, pitched decently well, but let up a couple home runs, and now is facing them again. I think you could get to a full stack here via Pete Alonso, Javier Baez, Francisco Lindor, and Kevin Pillar. Pillar specifically is $2,100. He's not a lock to play right now, but puts the ball in the air a ton against lefties. He'd be pretty fun if he were to play. Finally, Jesus Luzardo is facing the Phillies tonight and looked really good last time out, like super impressive. And he's starting to ditch his sinker, which is a great thing for everyone, but especially for him. And when you combine that with the park, that's why I'm okay with the Phillies not being in stacks. Also, no Rhys Hoskins. You know, there are a lot of factors here. I am fine with being in on them. Freddie Galvis could be another good low salaried option, assuming he plays. So Galvis, Pillar, two almost minimum salary guys who have some power. And I think they both do look pretty solid for today. Let's finish up here with some dinger calls for tonight. The fun one will be from that game, and it will be Kevin Pillar. Again, I think that against the lefty, he's someone who's always an option. Not sure if he'll play, but if he does, I think that Pillar is a batter on whom we should be in just because the power is good, super low salary, probably not going to be on a ton of lineups either. The boring one to me is Adam Duvall. It's boring because it's at Coors Field and he's super powerful, but I still want to go there. I had Freddie Freeman last night, so we'll go with Duvall for today for the home run pick. So dinger picks, Adam Duvall and Kevin Pillar. That is all that we have here for today on the solo shot. But again, we are back here at 10:30 on the FanDuel YouTube page talking NASCAR for the Cookout Southern 500, UFC Vegas 36 podcast via Austin Swaim, already posted on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Find that by searching there and make sure you subscribe because next week, NFL's back. We have our Heat Check Week 1 preview coming up on Thursday with myself and Brandon Gadula live on YouTube at 10 and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So search for it, hit subscribe, hit the like and review button. We do appreciate those of you who have done so. If you've got questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you tonight. We'll talk to you once again on Tuesday with no solo shot Monday due to the holiday. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.